So this bike here is an Alchemy Arktos 29. So this is a local Colorado brand. This is gonna be their enduro bike. So an enduro bike is gonna see a little bit of action typically. They're beat up on a little bit more. This one is no stranger to that. We found that the rear triangle actually has a carbon brake in it, and the rear rim is dented. So those are two major things that we're gonna wanna tackle. We have managed to source a new rear triangle from Alchemy, and we sourced a new rear rim, so we're gonna swap both of those today. The way we find broken carbon is usually through visual inspection first, and then a tap test. So I'm gonna tap, and when I hear a really dull spot right there, right where the visual damage is, that lets me know that's likely some broken carbon. A lot of times we'll just stick with just the analog tool like this, but we also like to double check with our digital tap hammer. So this gives me a reading, and it allows me to know how quickly the sound is reverberating through this. And if I have a difference of more than 200 nanoseconds, then I know things are bad. And this is reading about 15 to 1600 on the damage, and it's reading around 1100 on the control, basically the same spot on the other side of the bike. And then the rim here likely took an impact when it had lower pressure, and you can see it from the side. But that's just it's holding air now, but it's gonna create an uneven ride for the next customer, and that's not something that we wanna pass along. So we're gonna take care of that as well. So we're gonna bring it over to Carl, and he's gonna start with that transition of the rear rim, and then we'll swap out the rear triangle.
Instead of replacing the rear wheel in this case, it's a nice enough wheel. We're just going to do the rim itself. So that's going to look roughly like a wheel build, minus lacing the spokes, because I was able to get one that's a close enough size that I can just swap the spokes from one to the other. Set that aside, being careful not to touch the braking surface with my dirty, greasy hands. Take out my tubeless valve and peel off the rim tape. Got my new rim over here. It's gonna mark out a couple of reference points for myself before I set it all up. Mark out the valve hole, and then mark which side of this rim I want to be my drive side. And I'm just gonna match them together here and go ahead and put some tape around them to tie them together. What this is gonna allow me to do is just loosen spokes from one wheel and transfer them directly over to the other one. In this case, I'm literally just gonna now be loosening the spoke from the old wheel and transferring it over to the new rim. And our new rim did come with some fresh spoke nipples and washers, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and just use the new stuff. It's always good to start fresh. And loosening one spoke at a time, getting it moved over. Now we have to bring it all gradually up to tension and get it trued, and then we can put it all back together and in the bike. Wheel's still got some lateral wobble to it, but what I'm looking for right now really is to make sure that it's mostly radially true. Make sure there's no big hops, like I didn't get a spoke like way too loose or tight. right, now we're close enough. I'm gonna go ahead and refer to my wheel. DT Swiss prints all their specs on the rims, which makes it really nice what my spoke tension should be. So I'm looking for a maximum of 1200 Newton meters. I want to undershoot that quite a bit. So this tool right here, this is the tension meter. It clamps the spoke in here and then measures the tension on a scale here. And there's a whole bunch of versions of this tool. The indicator just goes on the hub, and then I have two pads that show the rim. And I just want those to be touching on each side. And if they're not, I can tell that I need to pull some tension one way or the other. So in this case, I can see I have a gap here. So I need to pull the rim that way, down toward the drive side. Oh yeah, spot on. All right, we've got the wheel all tensioned up and trued up and ready to go. Since I have it in the truing stand already, I am gonna go ahead and tape it up. First thing I like to do on a completely fresh rim is clean up the rim a little bit. There's a couple different methods to doing this. I tend to have really good luck just starting opposite the valve hole and doing just one layer of tape. Getting the edges sealed here is the most important part. That's where the air is going to leak out from. All right, now that we have this all taped up, we can go ahead and put the cassette and rotor back on. Okay, so we have our new rear triangle here on the bench. So now it's time to just start disassembling everything from the back of the bike and getting it ready to swap. First thing I'm going to do is undo any zip ties that are securing cables together. It's only the shift cable that goes through the frame, so that'll make that easy. Go ahead and pop the chain off. Threads from this side, but it is threaded from the other side, so it's actually going to be reverse threaded from the drive side of the bike. Now we just have these covers to remove and 2 more bolts. All right. Old rear triangle is freed up. We can go ahead and set that to the side. Use this opportunity to go ahead and clean up all these tight spaces that you don't normally get a chance to get to. Now they've gotten everything cleaned up and nice looking, we can go ahead and grab our new rear triangle and start putting everything back together again. When these things go together, just to keep them sliding nicely without binding up, I like to use just a little drop of grease. Personally, Jamontek's liquid grease works really well for this because it's nice and lightweight. Yep, once I get everything reattached here, my final step, I'm actually going to go to Alchemy's website. They do have a pretty good selection of tech docs. Reference what they say for this bike as far as the bolt locations and torques. And I'm gonna go ahead and torque everything to the level that they describe. This bolt looks like it could have, it's really more of an axle than a bolt. Looks like it could have a little Loctite on the threads, but these are collet axles. And so the outer bolts actually thread in and expand a wedge on the inside, and that's what keeps it located. So I'm not gonna worry about Loctiting. I'm just gonna put a couple of drops of liquid grease on the threads just to help them slide in without binding up. So at this stage, I do have everything located here. I need to start torquing things down, so I'm gonna go ahead and look up the torque specs. And the collet bolts here get set to 22. Always make sure to reset your torque wrenches to 0 before putting them away. Just release all that spring tension. Now we're ready to put all the drivetrain components back on the bike. As long as I'm here, I'm gonna go ahead and torque this down. The range on the crank bolts for Shimano are 12 to 14 Newton meters, so I generally like to just shoot for right in the middle at 13. Good to go. Now I can go ahead and get the tire on and send it onto the line. Give that a few bounces.